Recognizing the member for Chilliwack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's once again a great pleasure and honor to be able to speak in front of you on behalf of my constituents here in Chilliwack. I'd first like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Stalo people, in particular that of the Palalt and Chilkoyak tribes. I'd really like to take a moment here to thank the Minister of Finance and her team. She is and her team have come up with an exceptionally thoughtful budget that is going to help us get through and recover from this pandemic. You know, there's all sorts of hardworking folks on the front lines of this pandemic. Doctors, nurses, teachers, folks who are folks in the service industry, and you know, this is really tough on them. And I'd like to take a moment, definitely, to thank each and every one of them. And you know, even though we can see hope on the horizon right now, we are a ways off. During the pandemic, many people and families have experienced the stress of unexpected job loss, and not everyone has been affected in the same way. We often hear sometimes we're all in the same storm, but not the same boat. Budget 2021 includes new investments to support people by improving childcare, making life more affordable, reducing poverty, advancing reconciliation, and investing in the services that folks rely on. The budget continues to protect the mental health and safety of all British Columbians and expands the services people rely on with $4 billion in healthcare funding over the next 3 years, including funding to continue to deliver COVID-19 related health services. COVID-19 health supports to keep people safe. While more people are being vaccinated each day, government continues working hard to keep people safe. And the budget allocates $900 million in 2021 and 2022 to support the province's continued response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, this includes funding for the provincial vaccination program so that every British Columbian can receive their COVID-19 vaccine. I just received mine. I got a shot of AstraZeneca vaccine as they changed the age requirements on Monday. I was able to get a vaccine on Tuesday, and I'm so very grateful for that. I alluded last time that I would be able to register last Friday. I was able to register last Friday, and then luckily the AstraZeneca age was lowered, and I was able to get a shot of that. So I'm very thankful for that. And definitely, I encourage everyone in this house, if you are 40 plus, to go out and get that vaccine. The best vaccine is the vaccine that you are first offered. Testing and contract tracing will also be in the budget, as well as expanded flu immunization, increased capacity at the BC Centre for Disease Control, and the rural and remote collaborative framework to improve access to health services for rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. Also included in the budget will be ongoing supports to ensure the safety of long-term care and assisted living facilities, including screening staff, and providing additional personal protective equipment to help keep seniors safe. So as you can see here, Mr. Speaker, is that this budget definitely includes the kind of investment, the kind of spending that we need to get through the pandemic and keep people healthy and safe during it. And this is only one part of the budget speech that I see a lot of hope in, and that I must commend the finance minister and her team for being so thoughtful about. So I fully support this budget. So I'd like to maybe talk about childcare. It's a huge investment, so important for families. Will help people get back to work, and can't be said enough of how great our childcare program is, and it's in the budget. So far, over 35,000 BC families now have access to low-cost childcare through historic investments over the last 4 years. And Budget 2021 more than doubles the number of $10 a day childcare spaces, which means 75 more childcare centers, and the thousands of families who rely on them will benefit from the program. We will continue to create new spaces every year, and more families will have access to childcare on school grounds with the expansion of the Seamless Day pilot program, the current early childhood educator wage enhancement, which will be doubled to $4 an hour, benefiting approximately 11,000 early childhood educators. 2,000 more families will have access to programs that improve inclusion in day-to-day activities for children with support needs. Also, $20 million will provide additional health and safety grants to childcare providers to ensure centers remain safe through increased cleaning supplies, personal protective equipment, or space improvements. And families in the Fraser Valley will now have access to almost 400 new licensed childcare spaces as part of the province's ongoing commitment to increasing access to childcare through the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. These new childcare spaces, Mr. Speaker, will be a wonderful resource for families as the Fraser Valley's population continues to grow. We know that having accessible and affordable childcare is a top priority for British Columbians, and that's why it's important that we're seeing new spaces open up in communities across the province. The Childcare BC New Spaces Fund is supporting 6 projects that will create a total of 380 new licensed childcare spaces in the Fraser Valley, in Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Mission, and Maple Ridge. These spaces are part of the fastest creation of childcare spaces in BC's history, and we're making a milestone here. These are just going to be wonderful for my community, Mr. Speaker. I'm so happy that of the 380 new spaces, 138 will be here in Chilliwack. You know, Mr. Speaker, since July 2018, more than 20,000 new licensed childcare spaces have been funded in British Columbia. 422 right here in Chilliwack. And throughout the province, the Childcare BC plan has helped parents save up to $1,600 a month per child through the Affordable Childcare Benefit and Childcare Fee Reduction Initiative. As a result of these investments, parents in the Fraser Valley have saved nearly $60 million on childcare. $60 million, Mr. Speaker, that's amazing. Early childhood educators in these communities have received over $3.2 million in wage enhancements. And through BC's combined affordability initiatives, more than 36,000 children have received childcare for $10 a day or less since the beginning of the Childcare BC plan. So maybe, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to stop here because childcare is such a wonderful thing, and it's such a great thing that we're doing for families, and yet I hear the opposition get up and complain about it during question period. And they wonder, Mr. Speaker, why we talk about their 16 years of mismanagement of our province. You know, and you know, they talk about a budget. I myself think that their budgets are budgets where they do things such as loot ICBC to balance their budgets, or they did. And so, you know, instead of asking questions about great things like affordable childcare, affordable rental housing, social assistance rates, they should be asking questions. They shouldn't be asking questions about what they didn't do, Mr. Speaker, and then complaining why we are doing them. They should ask questions about what they did. So instead of maybe asking about affordable rental housing and having the AG dunk on you in question period, perhaps you should ask a question like, why aren't you selling public assets off for pennies on the dollar? That would be a question that would be more with their brand, Mr. Speaker. Or instead of asking questions about social insurance rates, which weren't raised for 10 years under a BC Liberal government, and yet have been raised by $325 since the BC NDP took over. Instead of asking questions about that, Mr. Speaker, and having the premiers skate circles around you in question period, perhaps you should ask, why aren't you looting ICBC, or a question such as that. And they can take my advice or leave it, but I'll just put it there. That's why we, when we are asked about things that we are doing that they didn't do, they're going to hear about that they didn't, about, you know, why we are doing them and how they didn't do them, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to talk about the BC recovery benefit. It's helped approximately 2.5 million British Columbians with more than 1.2 billion to date, while stimulating local economies. You know, when folks get, working people or poor people get money, they spend it in their local communities. So it really is economic stimulus for our local communities, Mr. Speaker. The benefit provides a one-time tax-free payment of up to $1,000 for eligible families and single parents, and up to $500 for eligible individuals. I don't think I'm telling anyone anything new here. And budget 2021 includes $100 million to continue to fund the BC recovery benefit. And I can tell you, for my constituents, the BC recovery benefit has meant a lot. I have one constituent who's a senior, and you know, is on a fixed income of about $13,000 a year, and $500 to this man was you know, life-changing around Christmas, and was so important and so impactful. And you know, that's the power of a BC NDP government, is it makes positive material changes in folks' lives. So maybe I'd like to turn here and talk about education briefly. As the House knows, or the members of the House know, I used to be a school trustee. And I've said it before, but under the BC Liberal government, we didn't get much investment in education, especially here in Chilliwack. And we you know, we had our budgets cut back, but even more important, Mr. Speaker, is we didn't get any capital projects or capital spending in Chilliwack. We ballooned our portable population, and you know, we know that kids learn better when they're in a brick and mortar school and not out in a portable. And worse than that, portables are something we shouldn't strive for. School districts have to pay for purchase portables and pay for their upkeep out of their operating capital. So instead of building capital projects and building classroom spaces in Chilliwack, the BC Liberal government was downloading its costs onto the backs of the kids in Chilliwack. And that's what it was doing. And there's a whole generation of kids who who were robbed of everything that they deserve in education. So I'll just speak about a couple of the capital projects that are in the in budget 2021. You know, our government has made it a top priority to address urgent enrollment needs for schools throughout BC, and the expansion of capital projects in Chilliwack will move students out of portables and into modern new learning spaces while helping them get the most of their education. And we're proud to see multiple school projects currently under construction in Chilliwack. And I can't wait to visit students and staff in their new learning spaces once it's safe to do so myself. So, you know, we're getting a 10 classroom addition to Vetter Elementary School in our community, which will provide over 240 new student spaces. This is a $11.8 million investment from the provincial government to Chilliwack, to education in Chilliwack. We are going to get an addition to a secondary school, which will provide 450 new student spaces. That's a $23.9 million project. Very exciting. And entirely in the provincial budget, entirely. I remember the BC Liberal government had a rule where if you wanted a capital project built, for them to okay it, you had to pony up money out of your operating capital. Once again, Mr. Speaker, stealing from the per student funding, basically
Member,
forcing us to use our
Member,
operating capital.
Member, be careful with your language, please, to your words.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Sorry. And in the previous budget, Mr. Speaker, Chilliwack was also funded, was an integrated arts and technology school. It's going to be called Imagine High, and that's a $15.4 million provincial investment. We got a new elementary school that's already in construction, Stetos Elementary Middle School. And that's a $48.6 million provincial investment. Another thing I'm really excited about, Mr. Speaker, is the widening of Highway 1. While it doesn't reach all the way out to Chilliwack, it will benefit my constituents greatly. It will eventually come past the Wacom Road exit, which is almost to Chilliwack, but that will ease traffic congestion from that point into the city. And many of my constituents will undoubtedly benefit from that and be able to make it to and from work quicker. You know, folks will have a lot more time to spend with their families and stuff. And what's great about these large infrastructure projects, not the school capital projects, but large infrastructure projects like highway widening or other large infrastructure projects like that, is that they'll be built under community benefit agreements. And community benefit agreements are terrific. You know, nearly 20% of our construction workers are currently 55 or over, and only 12% are under the age of 25. Women only represent 14% of the total workforce, and only 6% of the on-site employment, while Indigenous peoples represent just 8% of total employment. Community benefit agreements look to change that dynamic. They will help youth. They will help Indigenous people. They will help women all find meaningful employment in the construction industry. It will help to train the new generation of workers. It increases apprenticeship opportunities with a target of 25% participation rate on community benefit agreements. That's so good for young people who want to get into the building trades, and make that their life and make that their living. So many of people who work in the building trades, they go from job to job to job, and sometimes they don't always get apprenticeships on these jobs or have apprenticeships on these jobs, and that's why the workforce is aging in the construction industry. So increasing apprenticeship opportunities will provide a more achievable path to Red Seal trade certifications for apprentices and achieve a more stable labor and equitable labor relations environment. So I'm pretty excited about community benefit agreements, as well as very excited about the widening of the highway. What I would like to talk about here for a second as well, which has a great impact on my constituents here in Chilliwack, is mental health and addictions and the investments that this budget is going to mean for my constituents. We have quite a bit of mental health and addiction issues here in Chilliwack. We have folks using drugs on the street often, and we recently had a spate of overdoses. We had 15 in under an hour. It was because someone was mixing benzoids into the opioids. People thought they were getting opiates and were getting benzoids instead. And Narcan does not work on that type of overdose, and so those people unfortunately lost their lives. It was tragic. But when we're talking about mental health, this budget, $97 million to build a network of mental health supports for youth through increased mental health funding for schools, new Foundry centers that provide young people health and wellness resources in their community, and integrated child and youth supports teams for 15 more school districts. That's quite exciting stuff. Also, there'll be $61 million in funding over 3 years to improve access and quality of mental health services, including expanding eating disorder care and better access to suicide prevention services and early psychosis intervention. And $14 million for the First Nations Health Authority to deliver mental health and addiction services to Indigenous peoples. Substance use and overdose, there'll be a substance use and overdose emergency response, which will have $330 million over the fiscal plan to provide a full spectrum of substance use treatment and recovery services, including $152 million for opioid treatment, and 195 new substance use treatment and recovery beds in communities throughout the province to help more people on a path to recovery. And that is really exciting stuff for the constituents of Chilliwack and really the constituents around the province. We obviously have a crisis here. Many people are calling it the other or second health crisis that we are having in our province, as well as the pandemic, and resources and investments in this area have been needed for, and our government has been making them and continues to make them. So, this budget is focused on supporting people through the pandemic and after. And, to support people through the pandemic and help ensure people don't fall further behind as BC moves towards recovery. The budget includes supports and services to make BC more affordable for everyone and creating a more affordable BC for everyone. So we're going to come out of this this pandemic and recovery. We're going to come out stronger and more inclusive and make a more affordable, a more equitable British Columbia. Another exciting thing that's coming out of this budget, free public transportation for children 12 and under. Over 340,000 children 12 and under around the province will be able to ride public transportation for free in time for classes this September. You know, the government is investing $26 million here, including $50 million from the federal provincial restart agreement to help families get around more affordably. Families in the Translic service area alone will save up to $672 a year for each child that uses a monthly pass. That's amazing. That's great stuff, and this budget delivers that. We've also I talked a little bit about education capital funding, but this, you know, we're going to support education in other ways. The pandemic has been especially hard on BC's youth, teachers, and support staff. And the budget continues to make investments in BC's education system to improve access to mental health supports in schools and to develop a framework to address racism and reconciliation so that the next generation can continue to develop with the safety and support they need to thrive. And the budget invests $1.2 billion in operating funding over the fiscal plan to support the growing number of students in BC's K-12 system and to support wage increases negotiated under the Sustainable Services Negotiating Mandate. And of course, I spoke about the capital investments before, but there's going to be $3.5 billion in capital investments in education over the fiscal plan, which is exciting. I spoke briefly about affordable housing. We are going to build more than 26,000 new homes. Or sorry, we have built more, but haven't built 26,000 new homes. Are underway, and this is exciting. This is all going to be affordable housing. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm just going to maybe start a bit of a conclusion there. This budget is forward-looking, is inspirational, is very thoughtful. I thank the minister and her team. They've done a great job here, and this budget is going to help us get through this pandemic healthy and safe and come out the other side a stronger province. So I urge all my colleagues to support this budget. Thank you very much.